So I'm going to be answering the question, what is our new mission and vision? You've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Not this morning, right? 11 months, right? Or longer. Now let me just say before I share the specifics, there will be other specifics to come. There will be more details. A lot of the details will be you all. So think about it that way. If you're thinking, well, what about this or what about that? What about me? Right? What about me? So we don't expect you to grab hold of everything that I'm about to share. This is going to be a little bit of an information dump this morning, and then we will do more bite-sized conversations and dialogue and all that kind of stuff regarding our mission and vision. And so we are excited to share with you. The things I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to be sharing something called a vision frame. And the vision frame essentially is this idea of day-to-day ministry within the life of the church. What are we going to be doing on a day-to-day basis, and how are we going to be doing that, and why, and all those questions, right? And then a little bit later, I'll talk about the thing in the middle there called the milestones. That's going to be more like short-term and long-term planning. So we have the day-to-day stuff, right? And then we have like where are we going, where are we heading? So let me begin by sharing about those two resources that Teen talked about, Church Unique and God Dreams, those books. They're not really, they don't tell you what your vision is. They just help you begin to form a vision prayerfully as a group. And the Church Unique process that we used previously in Stratton, Colorado, where I was pastor last, was very impactful. Just that one piece. And we kind of built on that. And so another one of our sister churches down in Arizona, one of our more prominent churches in Arizona, used the Church Unique process as well, we found out later, and has had great success as well implementing that. And so I want to talk about the vision frame. So this is more of a process, a strategy, than it is simply a statement. Right? A lot of churches, organizations will have a mission statement or a vision statement, and then it just kind of gets filed away somewhere and nothing's ever done with it. That's not what this is. This is a strategy, a process. And so the vision frame, first of all, we're answering numerous questions. First of all, is the mission. What are we doing? Well, every church is called to make disciples of Jesus unapologetically. We are called to try to help new people come to faith in him, to find that great hope in him. And so the question is, how are we going to do that? How does a church, a local church, make disciples? Well, it's different for every church in every context because every church is unique, every setting's unique, every culture's unique. This is the mission that we have prayerfully developed for our church. This is how we are going to be making disciples. Engaging everyone to equip rising generations to live for Jesus. Let's dive into that just a minute. Engaging everyone. First of all, we want you to hear that we expect, we desire, we call everyone to be engaged in this mission and vision. We want everybody because we believe everybody has a part. My very first message I preached when I was candidating, trying out, was everybody has a place. Everybody has a part. So we want to engage everyone in this new mission and vision. And this mission and vision is to equip, to disciple rising generations. We say, what are rising generations? Well, we would categorize that as from infants to age 29. The social studies and social statistics and all those kind of things basically speak about the idea that adulthood has gone from around the age of 25 to the age of 30. And that's based upon different markers and milestones, about 5 of them. You might say, well, when you're 16, you get your driver's license. You're 18, you can vote. When you're 21, you can do other things. But usually they say about 25 is when we reach adulthood. But today, that's kind of been extended, right? This delayed adulthood, because of all the different cultural factors. And so rising generations is infants to 29. We want to engage everybody to equip, disciple, pour into these rising generations so they might live for Jesus. Now, there's a bunch of us who are 30 and over. And you're thinking, well, what about me? Well, first, I might just push back and say, that's not the best question to ask. However, there is a what about me, the idea that if we're going to pour into rising generations, everybody 30 and over has to be discipled so they can pour into, correct? And a good example of how something like this works, sometimes we think, well, if we're focusing on a certain age group, then it's to the exclusion of others. It doesn't work that way. Church I was in Stratton, we had to focus on families there because we had a high number of married people, an unusually high number of married people in that culture. Very few single people. It was in a rural area, so statistically, very high number of married people. So we said, let's focus on marriages and families because of that unique cultural context. And as we did, we said, let's do fewer things better. And so we had a vacation Bible school, and we really put a lot of time and energy into that, and it became kind of one of the best in the area because of that intentionality. And then we had a couple kids come to that Bible study, or that vacation Bible school. Those 2 kids gave their life to Jesus because of that. Got the chance to baptize them, wonderful opportunity. Later, mom and dad started coming because kids started coming, and then mom and dad give their life to Jesus and get baptized. And then later, Grandpa, who was near to death, a couple months away from death, called for Pastor to come, and I had a chance to pray with him to give his life to Jesus. And then later had the opportunity to do his funeral, which was sad but a celebration. And you can see how an intentionality on one age group ripple effect to multiple generations. And so if you have any concern at all that this means that we're forgetting about our older people or anything like that, you will see very quickly in time that's not the case. Engaging everyone to equip rising generations to live for Jesus. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we call this our map. Essentially, this is how are we going to accomplish this mission to make disciples? How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do it in 2 primary ways. And we'll get into the details of that later, and you'll fill in the details. But our map is simply this: gather and scatter. We're going to gather on Sunday mornings, and we're going to do less better. So Sunday mornings are going to become much more significant, much more meaningful, as much as we can with the Lord's help. And so we're going to gather on Sunday mornings, worship Jesus well in all the ways that we do. And then we're going to scatter throughout the week in our groups. So whether those are groups that meet in homes, whether those are groups that are going to meet here at the church campus, prayer groups, or other specific studies that are happening, we're going to gather, we're going to scatter. But those scatter groups, those missional groups, are going to be groups that are saying, we're not just having a Bible study. We're not just going to drink tea, even though we might drink tea and we might have a Bible study. We're going to make those groups missional groups. How can we pour into rising generations? How can we love people in our communities around us? How can we as a group go out and serve together, people in our communities? How can we serve people in our neighborhoods, be a good neighbor to our neighbors? Gather and scatter. Then we asked ourselves the question, well, why? Why are we doing some of this stuff? Well, we believe we have some core values that we call our motives that should drive all that we do. These are things we're passionate about. And so our motives are answering the question of the why behind a lot of this. And so we have 4 values, motives, that we want to highlight. First of all, discover life. We desire to help people find life in Jesus Christ. Can we get an amen? Thank you. We want them to experience God through prayer, experience Jesus through the Word of God, experience Him through worship, experience Him through loving your neighbor. And so they think that one of our core key values is we want people to discover life. And this is part of why we have a new mission and vision. We need to do a better job of helping new people discover life in Jesus. What's our next motive? Irreplaceable relationships. We think the church ought to be a place where people find deep, meaningful, irreplaceable relationships. Like, I couldn't do without him. I couldn't do without her. If they're gone, a part of me is gone. We think this is what the church ought to be. It ought not be just a Sunday morning gathering and we don't ever see each other or engage with each other all week long. We ought to have deep, meaningful, irreplaceable relationships amongst the generations, younger and older, all pouring into one another. Our next value, equip all ages. Again, if you are concerned that we're forgetting about you, if you're 30 and older, I'm 44, right? I'm the young guy. Not really, but none of these guys are 30. I'm sorry, Angela's 29. I did forget about that. Angela's 29. She's almost aged out. But we want to equip all ages. Basically, this means to disciple all ages. It means you have to be poured into for you to pour into others. And so this is one of our key values, one of our high motives. Finally, big faith. Go big or go home, right? We are going to pursue as a motive, as a value, as a why, big faith. Stepping out into things that makes your knees knock a little bit. Hard to swallow when I think about that. So this is one of our key values. And so we say we have our mission, our map, our motives, and say, well, when are we successful? Like, when do we know we're hitting the bullseye, right? In other words, what should a disciple look like as we're aiming to make disciples and raise up these rising generations, equipping all of our people? What should a disciple look like? When are we successful? Well, we believe there are a number of marks that come with a disciple. And I want to highlight a few. First of all, there is a person who is helpful. A person who is helpful. A person who will make the lives of other people better. Pretty simple, but your next door neighbor will notice because you're helpful. You're just helpful. They shoveled my drive for me. That was really helpful. That was really gracious. Pour themselves into others, discipling others, laying your life down for others, simply to make other people's lives better. A person who's confident. Confident, not arrogant. Don't hear arrogant. Confident. Somebody who's exuding hope and hopefulness. They have a surety of their identity as God's child. They have assurance that they will indeed enjoy something even better than this life in the life to come, but yet they have a tremendous life in the here and now despite the challenges because they know Jesus. They have a confidence about their life. Somebody who's generous. People who demonstrate a generous spirit about themselves. And so it invades all of their life. Their talents, their finances, resources, all areas of life, they are just generous. Who doesn't like being around a generous person? Somebody who is humble. People who adopt a posture of learning, understanding they never arrive, but they're always more to learn. Always a more reliance on God. You never get past reliance on God. Humility. Somebody who's merciful. They understand that they have been forgiven. And so therefore, they are forgiving of others. And finally, somebody who is holy. Not holier than thou. Holy. Why? Because of their near presence to the holy God. They stay as close to him as they can, and they reflect his character because of it. I want to be around those kind of people. These are the marks. And so ask ourselves, well, where does this go from here? Where do we go from here? These are kind of the day-to-day pieces and what we expect to see on a day-to-day basis in the life of our church. What about like 90 days from now, a year, 3 years, and going forward? Well, we have what we call our milestones. The milestones are essentially our short-term and long-term planning. And it looks something like this. If the milestones were a picture, it would look something like this. You have your kind of your Pikes Peak mountain scene there, and beyond the horizon, we're calling that 9 years from now, 2030. Beyond the horizon, it's far enough out there that you can just barely see it. 9 years. Our background here, where you can kind of see the base of the mountain, about 3 years out from now. Again, this is a picture, and we'll get into the details. But about 3 years out from now, our mid-ground is about 1 year out. Again, if this was a picture, if our milestones, our goals were a picture, about 1 year out is your mid-ground. Your foreground is kind of almost right in front of you. That sign, 90 days out, it's close. You can almost grab it. This is our milestones. If our milestones were goals, they would look something like this. Again, this is an information dump that we will process lots about in the next weeks and months. If our milestones were goals, they'd look like this. Maybe. There we go. the Beyond the Horizon vision. I'm going to close by sharing our 9-year vision of who we see us becoming as a church, God taking us. I'm going to paint you a picture in just a little bit. 9 years down the road. Background vision, 3 years from now, we're going to ask ourselves, between here and 2022, what 4 priorities should we focus on in the next 3 years to help us move towards our 9-year vision? In the next 3 years, Lord, what 4 things do you want us to focus on? 1 year, we're going to say, in the next year, what 1 or 2 of these 4 things should we focus on to keep us moving forward? And finally, 90 days, each 90 days, what 90-day focus are we going to have? You are going to know all of these things as they are unfolded, as we discover them, as you step into them, as you suggest them, as you step out in faith. These are all going to get filled in, and it's going to be very exciting. There's already great possibilities on the horizon. So as we looked at all of this and we began to ask ourselves some questions, our mission and vision had come together, and we asked ourselves, now that we have this new mission and vision, this engaging everybody to equip rising generations to live for Jesus and all that comes with it, what name for our church best fits that name? Does our current name, Grandview Community Church, best fit our new mission and vision? So we looked at it, and we asked questions regarding that name and the process of that name, and we decided that we didn't think that name fit our church best. So we decided that we would need to have a new name that would fit our mission and vision much better. So we landed on the name Ascent Church. Why the name Ascent Church? Well, first and foremost, we believe that a name ought to follow the vision. A name ought to come out of the vision and direction of a church. So we looked at our mission and vision, and as we were developing that, we saw so many places where the name Ascent Church fit very, very well. First of all, in that area of the mission, engaging everyone to equip rising generations. Can you visualize it? The rising, the ascending, that these generations would ascend in the springs as people who would shape cultures for the kingdom, that they would show people an alternative way of living, as would we who are older as well. We thought, Ascent Church fits that very well. We thought about our motives, discover life, that life with God is this ongoing ascent to higher places. That big faith, right, stretching to new places and new God-sized callings, ascending to new places with Him that we've never been before. Those marks we talked about of humility, understanding we never arrive, but we always are in this posture of learning, growing, ascending to new heights. So we thought, boy, the name follows the vision. And then we thought about biblical ties. You know, so much of what happens in the Bible happens atop a mountain, doesn't it? Key moments like Moses meeting with God, the 10 Commandments, Elijah, Jesus, the Transfiguration. He met with those 2 guys atop a mountain. So many key moments happen as people ascend the mountain to meet with God. Psalm 24, great psalm, asks this question: who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in His holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. How do you get clean hands and a pure heart other than connection with the holy God through Jesus, His Son? So we thought, ascend. Did you know that 1 in every 10 of the Psalms is an ascent psalm? 1 in every 10. These were psalms that were sung and prayed as the people of God would ascend up Mount Zion to meet with God in the holy place. Within those ascent psalms, there's a rich passage with deep Church of God roots, our background, Ascent, Psalm 133. How beautiful it is when brothers dwell together in unity, when God's people dwell together in unity. One of our key focuses in the Church of God is holiness, that holy life of connection with God, and unity, that we stay unified even when we have differences, because that shows the world that we love one another. We are God's children. An ascent psalm is part of our heritage. Lots of biblical ties, so we said, yeah, ascent. Cultural ties. Ascent draws deep images from our life here in Colorado Springs. Pikes Peak, the incline. I think I got an idea for opening weekend. Now, Ascent Church somewhere on flat I-70 in Kansas doesn't have the same impact. What are we ascending? A molehill? I just drove that twice. Finally, what does the name say? What are first impressions when people drive by or they see the name or they look at it online or whatever it is? Well, first impressions are a very positive one. The name is an upward direction, moving towards a better life, something better. And yet, as we said, there's always more to experience with God. Life can always get richer and deeper and more special, more meaningful, more transformational. So Ascent Church. We like it. I want to share with you, as I close my time in sharing, with our 9-year Beyond the Horizon vision. I want to paint a picture for you of where we hope and expect and pray that we will be 9 years from now, as we follow this new approach to the mission and new vision. In the next 9 years, Ascent Church will become a lively training center of rising generations being discipled to live for Jesus. We see kids and youth and emerging adults climbing higher as they are equipped and empowered in skills such as music and art and business, finance, marriage, and more. We see them scaling new heights in Christian practices such as the Word of God, prayer, loving their neighbors well, and sharing the good news of Jesus. We envision them gaining confidence in their identities in Jesus, being sharpened intellectually in the reasonable nature of the Christian faith, and exercising big faith in God. Finally, we picture them rising in leadership, shaping cultures in their circle of influence for the kingdom, being in the world but not of the world. We envision an unending circle of rising generations being trained as leaders and in turn reaching even more rising generations as we send them out to ascend in Colorado Springs, wider Colorado, the greater U.S., and all across the globe. In order to prepare these rising generations effectively, we recognize the crucial length of equipping all ages. We foresee irreplaceable relationships where an abundance of adults ages 30 and up are pouring into our kids and youth and emerging adults, giving them a place where they know they are loved, they are heard, they belong. We see a ripple effect of deep, meaningful, and life-giving relationships as siblings and friends and parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents, people of all ages being equipped to live for Jesus because of their connection to these rising generations. As we are on the ascent as a church, we see a healthy church model rising from our efforts, to the end that new churches are raised up in Colorado Springs and beyond out of our now vibrant church model. We want to become a mother church that starts new churches. This is Ascent Church as we head towards the year 2030.